Good night, good night, good night. I hope you guys are good. Please forgive my lighting. I am obviously not at the office. I ended up leaving early. So I'm here at home. So if you hear things in the background like the wind, I live on a hill. Right now, it sounds like I live next to the ocean because of how loud the wind is, but I tried to close the door as much as possible. Um, I'm also working with an overhead light that is over me and behind me at the same time, so you may not be able to see me properly, but don't worry about that. Pay attention to the information. Okay, so I'm just sharing this out really quickly and then we'll get started. Okay, so it's Monday, November 4th, y'all. We are in fall hurricane season, if that makes sense, which is crazy. It's crazy to think that we could still be on hurricane watch and the air outside is giving crisp and Christmas is around the corner. But nonetheless, this is the world that we live in, global warming. If you don't believe in it, I know what to say. I don't know what to say. Anyway, which reminded me that U.S. elections is coming up in a few days. Oh, not a few days, tomorrow. Anyway, that's neither here nor there, but it does affect us here in the Bahamas. So, for those of you who do not know, I am Shana E. I'm a pricing and positioning strategist. I am based here in the Bahamas. I work with anyone in the world. I have predominantly worked with not only locals, but Caribbean based persons who are outside of the country. I have an extensive background in working with MSMEs, with small businesses. For those of you who do not know what MSME means, it means micro, small, and medium enterprises. I love talking about pricing. I ironically though, I failed math in high school. Consistently got low grades. Got low grades in college. Yet here I am talking about pricing. I am quick to break out the calculator. I ain't even gonna lie to you. I can count money, sweetie. Now that calculus and that pre-calculus and that this and that algorithm and this and that, but I can count money, and that's what counts. I have experience working with, in the capacity of an employee, a consultant, or a client, with the Bahamas Chamber of Commerce and Employees Confederation, with the why can't I think Inter-American Development Bank, with the Access Accelerator Small Business Development Center, with the Canoe Innovation Hub, with the Royal Caribbean Kickstarter Program, with the Academy of Women Entrepreneurs Program for the U.S. Embassy, the Bridge Program that we put on with Link for the SBDC. So I say all that to say this is my passion, this is my job, this is my business, this is what I love to do. And so, without further ado, let's get into it. But first of all, I want to say thank you for joining me. If you are joining me live, please share this out. Tag people who you feel need to listen in on this conversation. If you are joining me on the replay, thank you so much for rewatching. And again, feel free to share this out with anyone that you feel needs to hear this conversation. So, I was going to talk about something that was a bit more, you know, mindset-y, and that was talking about giving yourself grace as an entrepreneur. And then I said, you know what? I don't feel like being woo-woo today. I don't feel like being woo-woo. And I had that flyer created and everything ready to go from last week, Thursday or Friday. And today, I won't say that I woke up and chose violence, but I'm just not in a woo-woo mood today. And so I said, you know what? What could I really talk about that would help people? And the first thing that popped in my mind is, child, they don't prepare you for this. So I said, let's talk about it. What they don't teach you in business school. Now, I have 3 disclaimers for y'all. The first one is I did go to business school. I'm not bashing business school. I have a bachelor's degree in business. I'm and an associate's. I'm not telling anyone don't go to school. I intend to also get a master's degree in business. Well, yes, it's business and psychology together, right? So I value education. I will never tell anyone do not go to school. Now, what I will say is, though, majoring in business management, mm, mm, maybe don't do that. Try to specialize, right? But that's my first disclaimer. I'm not saying don't go to school. I'm not saying don't value school. I have degrees, okay? And I'm going to get more. The second thing I want to say is that I graduated in 2009. It means that the world has changed completely. I graduated in a time where Facebook was just opening up to non college students. There was no LinkedIn, there was no TikTok, there was no Instagram yet. There were so many things that did not exist when I was in school and when I graduated. So, degrees and the subject matters would have and should have changed and evolved with the times. What I'm talking about tonight is beyond the theory because that's what a lot of business school is. It's theory, right? And while it's not the same, the closest thing I could liken it to is like a doctor. They go to medical school, they study these things, they learn it in and out, but then they still have to do internships so that they get hands-on experience. And that's where it's make or break, right? Because that's when the practical has to be brought alive. The theory has to be brought alive by the practical, okay? And so it's kind of similar to that, right? You can go to B school, you could go to business school, and you can learn the theory, you can do the simulations, you can do the case studies. But the reality is until you get out into the world, it's a whole different thing. Business school is heavy on theory. But what I want to talk to you tonight is about the things that, like, who's going to sit down and tell you, be prepared if you have a shop and customers sit in the shop, like if you have a cafe or a coffee shop, whatever you want to call it, and then your toilets start overflowing. These are the things that they're not going to tell you in business school. They're not going to tell you how to handle that. They're not going to tell you how that could look like a PR nightmare, how that is like a health and safety nightmare, how that could turn some people off, how some people will never come back because of that if it's busy, or how some people will be understanding and some clients won't be. These different types of things are the things that you don't learn in business school, okay? So I think those are my two disclaimers. I feel like I had one more earlier, but that's what I remember right now, okay? So let me just quickly pull up my notes because I wanted to stay on topic and on target tonight. Now, this one, y'all, is a big one. And I'm talking to you because I've learned this from experience. I've heard painful situations. I've had my own painful situations. The first thing is this. If they have not paid you a deposit, that is just a hypothetical conversation. If they have not paid you a deposit, that is a hypothetical situation. That's a hypothetical conversation. You don't owe people anything after that. One thing you have to remember is boundaries. If people feel like your boundaries soft, they can take advantage. I don't care if that's your friend, your auntie, your daddy, your mommy. People will take advantage, okay? Do not have conversation with anyone and you get excited and you say, okay, I'm gonna start early because they committed. They say, yeah, they're willing to pay the money, they're willing to start the job. You go out and you buy the supplies, guilty. You go out or you start planning the stuff and you start making calls, and then crickets. You hear nothing from them. Or they say, you know what, they decided to go in another direction. And here you are out of money that you spent that you never had in the first place because they told you a theoretical yes. They want to use you. Don't spend your money. Don't spend your time unless a deposit has been paid. Now, something I go by, unless this is a client who, like, I know that I've worked with them faithfully over time and we have that type of trust built, you're going to have to pay me a deposit and you're going to need to give me 60%. Okay? Unless it's like a long, protracted period, you have to give me 60%. And that is something that someone who I talk about business with frequently, he said, listen, you get at least 50%, or you get at least what will cover the cost of your materials if you are a product-based business. So if you know that your materials cost $200, you price the job at $450, then you need to make sure that your deposit at least covers the cost of the material, so that if they change their mind, so that if you never hear from them again, if they take long to pay you, if they ghost you, then you are at least not out of the cost of what you paid for the materials. And I have lived by that ever since. It makes no sense if you know that the materials cost $200 and then you say, oh, just give me a $75 deposit. Meanwhile, you done spend the $200 on the materials and now you can't find these people. Y'all, it happens. If you've never been ghosted in business before, prepare yourself for it. It happens. If you have not started your business yet, prepare yourself to be ghosted. It happens. Don't take it personally. One of the ways that you don't take it personally is you have standard operating procedures in place, SOPs. And one of the biggest SOPs is you need payment before you start work and before you purchase or spend a dime on anything. And again, I could tell you from experience, because I have jumped up and I've gotten excited and I said, oh, they're going to go with me and I'm going to make this money. And then I don't hear not a peep, not a peep. Okay. And I don't want you to experience that. I'm just trying to make sure that my sound is good. Okay. I think it is. Good night. And I don't want you to experience that. Okay, sorry, y'all. Okay, so the next thing that I want to say to you guys is know this term called net. That is a payment term. Y'all ever saw people, like maybe an invoice say net 90, net 120, net 180, net 30, net 60? That means that after you deliver the product or service, they're going to pay you net that many days. Okay? And I was talking to someone about this today. Y'all, it annoys me, it bothers me that this is a standard practice for a lot of corporations and for government. They come to small businesses, they want the product, they want the service, and then they pay you 90 days later, 120 days later, 45 days later. And it's like, come on now. How much runway do you think a small business has to just provide products and services and then don't get paid until 3 months, 4 months, 5 months, 6 months later, and have to keep running people down? And unfortunately, a lot of times we don't learn what the net is until it's time for payment. Then it becomes a conversation of, oh, well, it typically takes us about 4 weeks to get approval, and then it takes 4 weeks to do this, and then it takes 4 weeks to do that. And it's like, you should have said that from the beginning. So I say to you, ask. If this is a government entity, if this is a big corporation, anybody really and truly, what are your payment terms? Ask them that. Because a lot of times they're not going to think to volunteer it. And then other times they won't volunteer it because they don't want you to question them about why you're going to take so long to get paid. And I promise you, Do not put your business in a position where where you're operating from such a deficit because you had to foot the bill, especially if you're a product-based service, because you would have had to spend money for those products, for that product. And now you've delivered that product and you're still in the hole for it weeks and months later. Okay? Or rethink it and evaluate if your business can go that long without you getting that payment. The next thing is get things in writing, y'all. Get things in writing. I made a mistake last week because I was teaching one of my classes. And we were talking about email. Well, no, we were talking about communications, verbal and written communications. And I said one of the benefits of written communication is this thing called CYA. Now, what I should have taught them was CYS, which is cover yourself. Now, I didn't use the A word, okay? But, they put two and two together. The children ain't dumb. They put two together, and I was like, oh boy. I hope no parent comes back to me or admin and says, I taught their children a word that's inappropriate. But I taught them this because CYA, which is get things in writing, yeah, it will help you tremendously. I have had conversations with bosses, with employers, verbally, and then I follow up in writing just to confirm what we discussed. Please see the notes below. Or if I don't agree with something but it's going to happen anyway, please let the record reflect that I do not agree with X, Y, and Z, but I do understand that this is your final decision. Absolutely. Because when or if stuff goes wrong, I have been in positions where it has been said to me, well, why didn't you say anything? Why did you allow this to happen? Hold on, pause. Let me pull up the email so that I can give you the exact date in which I said, I do not agree with this and here's why. And then, of course, there's, oh, no, you don't have to do that. That's okay. Never mind. I remember. You don't have to do that. Don't play with me. And I would implore you to do the same. Get things in writing as a business. So if you know that your customer said they want $2,000 worth of services, and then they decided to, or product, and they decide to cut their bill down to $1,000, make sure that that is put in writing, and also you now include what they do get. And you know what? One of the easiest ways to do this is with an invoice. A lot of y'all out here operating very rogue. You don't even use invoices. You're using WhatsApp conversations, which I mean, okay, fine. It's better than nothing. But use an invoice because the invoice will clearly outline what it is that people are paying for. So no one in my floral business can say to me, oh, I thought I was getting 8 bouquets and 7 boutonnieres, when I could pull up and say, hey, hi, hold on, let me pull up the invoice that you signed, because they have to sign. No, you paid for 6 bouquets and 5 boutonnieres. Yeah, it's right here. And all they could say is, oh, okay then, I guess that's what I have to go with. CYA. That's one of the biggest things that I could tell you. CYA. Make it a practice. The next thing is plan with failures in mind so that you can put fail safes in place. What do I mean by plan with failures in mind? I'm not saying that your plans are going to fail. What I'm saying is a lot of times we plan based on If everything goes right, if everything goes perfect, if everything aligns, if everything falls into position, I see that in business plans. Oh, if everything is perfect and we're booked out 365 days a year, then this is how much money the business is going to make. First of all, if you're in the tourism industry, September is annually slow. And in fact, in some ways, there are other periods of the year that have been surprisingly slower, okay, compared to the past. So, how are you going to have 365 days of sold out tours, sold out services, sold out products, and only one cruise ship in the port? When your business plan acts as though there's six or three or four cruise ships in the port every single day for the entire year. That does not make sense. So when I say plan with failures in mind, it means that you need to then think about, okay, what do you need to do for your business when there's only one cruise ship in the port that day? And you're less likely to make as much money as when three or four cruise ships are in the port. What can you do as a business? How can you mitigate less foot traffic or less tourists in a particular area where you're selling? Put the fail safes in. That is a part of not just not just being in the business, but that's a part of running the business. Is you have to develop strategic thinking. It cannot be always you're reacting to something or you are doing things ad hoc. There has to be some type of planning, and it all has to come together. Okay? And another thing is, a lot of you like to plan as though Murphy's Law doesn't happen, as if Murphy's Law is not standing in the corner of the room saying, hey, I just waiting on you. I just need a little opportunity. The pandemic showed us probably the biggest Murphy's Law since the global pandemic of the 1900s. That was the biggest Murphy's Law. And some of us still have not learned. I have been in situations where Murphy's Law has happened and I had no plan. I remember I was gearing up to launch this website. This was several years ago. It was the first iteration of what is now my floral business. And it was going to be a blog, and it was going to display Bahamian weddings and destination weddings that happen in the Bahamas. And it was going to be like a high-end blog similar to what you see for brides, Mona Lucci, all those different things. Sent out the link to everybody, said, okay, my website goes live at this time, making a big deal out of it because I was really excited. How about, oh, I can laugh now. How about, and mind y'all, I had checked everything. The link goes live and I start to get messages. Hey, check your website. And I'm like, what's wrong with the website? What's happening? Right then, a virus. I don't know if someone hacked into the website, but there was virus in the code. And I immediately reached out to my my web developer, and they basically was like, we can't help you. We don't know what happened. It was fine when we finished it. And I'm saying to them, but did you check to make sure that everything was fine? Because I clicked live and this is what happened. Did you check to make sure that the code was good? They were of no help. So then I had to find money to pay someone else. No, it was GoDaddy, I think. And then I ended up in a long conversation with GoDaddy. I had to pay them to run a scan on my website in order to remove the code. And that scan took hours. It took a while. So, meanwhile, I'm there. Oh, my blog is launching, da 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 da. And then I had to take it down almost immediately because it was rerouting people to some green card website. Thank God it wasn't anything profane or, you know, weird. But I was just sitting there like, how in the heck did this happen? I had no contingency plan. In that situation, is there even a contingency plan? I don't know. Outside of having a designer on call, or even just having another person check over what the previous people had done. But I say all that to say that things happen, and there's nobody who can prepare you for someone hacking your website, for someone putting a virus in your website, for someone taking over your website. What do you do? These are the things that they don't tell you in business school. These are the things that can be extremely discouraging. The things that can make you feel like, you know what, I went through all of this and for what? And it was embarrassing, of course, right? Anyway, next thing is there's something called skin in the game. There's also something called sweat equity. And some of you have neither, and you need it. You need it. Skin in the game and sweat equity. Some of you think that if you start your business, or you don't even have to start a business, if you say something out loud like, oh, I'm going to start doing this, I'm going to start selling that, that automatically you should have people flooding to you wanting to pay you. Now, that's not how it works for most of us, for a lot of us, right? It's still work, a lot of work that goes into it. Sweat equity is the work that you have to put in, is the work that you can't run from. And that's another thing that business school won't necessarily teach you, because a lot of times, unless you're studying entrepreneurship, right? I think business school kind of prepares you more for like being a manager, being a supervisor. You are the person who, you're sitting at the desk, maybe more so than you're in the trenches fulfilling your orders. Then you have to sit down to do your own accounting. Then you have to sit down to schedule your own social media. And then you have to figure out how to capture content. And then you're dealing with customer service. And then you're dealing with taking orders. And you're dealing with the back end of your website. And there's so many different things that you have to deal with, and there's so many different hats that you have to wear, and business school doesn't teach you how do you move when you're wearing all 12 of these hats, when your time is stretched, when your time is limited, when you have limited resources, when there's only one of you and you may be running the business by yourself, or even you may have a partner, or there may be a few of you, but there are still deficits that need to be overcome for the business to run well. Okay? Business school doesn't prepare you for how do you make the choice between, I don't know if I should take on this huge order, because while I could use that money for the cash flow, they're not going to pay me for 4 months. And I don't know if I could keep the business afloat that long if I take on that order. Or I don't know if I could fulfill that many orders by myself, but I could really use that money. It doesn't do that. And that's where I think you have to ask for help. You have to learn to ask for help. It's another thing that it doesn't prepare you for. You have to be honest with yourself about your capacity, about what you can and cannot do, about what you and your partners, if you have them, can and cannot do. You have to think about, okay, what if this goes really well? What if this goes really wrong? You have to think about these things. Okay. Another thing that someone else told me, and I didn't understand it at the time, it didn't make sense to me, and it was a bit jarring. And the person says trying to help people try no, he said starting a business with the sole intent of helping people is going to break your heart. I was like, what you mean? I want to help people. I'm starting the business to help people. I like why would that cause me a broken heart? And frankly, I've learned that he's correct. And I've lived out this process. You can start the business because you want to help people. You can start the business because you want to make a difference in the world. There's nothing wrong with that. I still believe in that. That's how I move. But at the same time, you have to remember that people are people and business is business. Sometimes you need to separate the two. Sometimes you cannot separate the two. There are people who you may want to help and they don't want your help, not willing to accept your help, don't think they need help, not willing to accept your help, whether it's your products or your services. There are some people who, as much as you may fight to keep what you sell, what you make, what you produce, how you help, you may want to keep it affordable. And the majority of people still may say, you know what? No, don't want it. There may even be some people who say you're still too expensive, even though you might be a cheapest option or a cheaper option. You have to remember that you're running a business. You're not running a charity. You're not running a nonprofit. You're not running an expensive hobby. You're not running something that you're running a business. And one of the first things I said to my students, because I teach economics and commerce, is what? When you start a business, what is your goal? To make money. You all hear me? What is the goal? To make money. Let's talk about the parable of the talents, right? Because I know someone gonna be like, that's not true. You shouldn't lead with money. You're right, you don't have to lead with money. You don't have to lead with money. But let's look at the parable of the talents. When you're talking about how one servant got 5 talents, the other servant got 3, and one got 1. 2 of them multiplied them. What is that multiplication? It's profit. We bring in the parable into modern world. That's profit. So tell me again how, especially if you are a believer in Jesus Christ and God, and you're talking about how you're running this business and money doesn't matter, or you're running this business and you don't care about profit. The parable of the talents, that multiplication is profit. If the one who got 5 had done work and still stayed with 5, he would have broken even. The same with the one with the 3. But the fact that more was gained, multiplied, that's profit. And that was a sign to the owner of stewardship, good stewardship. Not the one who was afraid to do anything, not the one who hid the talent because he was afraid of the consequence of losing it. It was the ones that took risk, made the profit, were good stewards. Anyway, before I get too preachy, let's move on. But just remember, starting a business with the sole intent to help people will break your heart. I've lived it. I've experienced it. There are products and services that myself and other people have said, you know what, we're not going to charge, we're going to give it away for free. And even then, it was hard to find people to take the help to use the product, to inbox, to submit and go to the contact page. Baffling, yes, but human nature. We are human beings. We're dealing with human beings. We're not perfect, right? Find your niche, who you're serving, what makes you different, and you go from there. Helping doesn't have to come off of your list, but helping can be the full stop and the only thing on your list. You will suffer as a result. Okay? Also, remember another thing, the Pareto principle. The Pareto principle was, he didn't coin it himself, someone else did in the 40s. But it's derived from an Italian economist, Vilfredo Pareto. And he observed in his time, this is about 1906, he observed in his time that 80% of the land in Italy was owned by 20% of the people. And then he looked around the world and he noticed that there was a very similar trend. And so the Pareto principle, as it was eventually called, essentially says that 80% of the consequences come from 20% of the causes. What does that mean in business? And disclaimer, this doesn't apply at all times. In business, it means that 80% of the outcomes in your business come from 20% of your actions. So my question becomes, what actions are you focusing on? Are they the things that will get you 80% of the results? There are some of you, your focus is, oh, you need a nice shiny logo, you need a nice shiny website, and yet you have not figured out what in the heck you're even selling and who you're selling to. That's part of the 20%, not the website. What actions are you focusing on? And are they moving you to the 80% of the results that you want? Don't focus on, oh, I need to buy, the latest whatever. I need to buy the latest phone. I need to buy the latest equipment so that, I could do a podcast or so that I could capture content. Meanwhile, you could buy all those things and still not do zip, ziddly squat with them. You just focused on some things that were irrelevant because why? You're not going to use them anyway. Or you're so focused on creating this podcast that you haven't sat down and thought about the name, you haven't thought about the marketing, you haven't thought about the concept as a whole, how it's going to be distributed, where it's going to live, which platform it's going to be hosted on. All you care about is the fact that you need a mic and you need this and you need that. There's so many things that become before the equipment. 20% of the actions yield 80% of the outcomes. That's the Pareto principle. You have to train yourself to focus on what's important. You have to learn how to prioritize in business. And again, in B school, they're not necessarily going to teach us that. They may teach you how to shop your podcast, how to position your podcast, how to do whatever. But are they going to teach you about the decisions you have to make before that? Maybe not. I already talked about it before. Business school isn't necessarily going to teach you about scarcity and choices and the choices that you have to make while you're running your business, while you're starting your business. I had a session with a client earlier this year and they asked me something, and it's like a chicken and egg situation, right? Because they were facing a situation of, do they buy more inventory that is bulky and they're running out of storage space, they really don't have any more storage space, or do they buy a vehicle to carry around the inventory that they already have, because right now or at the time they were using their own personal vehicle and it was putting wear and tear on the family vehicle. These are the things, the decisions that we have to make. Buy more inventory that could potentially get you more money because you have more things to sell, to rent, to provide to customers, but then you don't have a space to put them, or do you buy a company vehicle? I'm almost done because I have an 8. I have a call I need to hop on. My list is longer, but I want to say this. There's no perfect plan in entrepreneurship. You can plan, you can work the plan, but you also have to be able and willing to pivot in the plan. I think what catches a lot of us and what has caught larger companies in the past is we stay stuck on what we thought it should be, what we thought it should look like, or we stay stuck on, oh, this was working in the past, and we're not paying attention to the fact that it's not working now and we need to do things differently. If you look at the story of Amazon, for example, Amazon started off with the intention of being an online bookstore or an online retailer of books. And then it morphed into, well, they could sell other things. And there was a demand for other things. So then it opened up, there was a pivot. Imagine if Amazon had not pivoted and they wanted to stick to, we're only going to be an online book retailer. They would have been struggling, maybe, the way that Barnes and Nobles is struggling now, the way that other physical bookstores are struggling that also have e-commerce websites. So, in conclusion, as they teach us in English class, I'm a proponent of business school. I just want you to know that going to business school is not a cure all. You're not going to learn everything that you need to know. You're not going to learn how necessarily to run your business on a day to day basis when things pop up and surprises happen, particularly if you're talking about running things from a solopreneur standpoint. Yes, there are entrepreneurship curriculums, absolutely. And I had actually asked ChatGPT earlier to compare entrepreneurship degree programs. Okay. And ChatGPT says entrepreneurship bachelor's degrees offer a blend of theoretical knowledge, practical skills, and networking opportunities that significantly aid aspiring entrepreneurs. Graduates benefit from a structured learning environment, access to resources, and mentorship that can enhance their ability to launch and manage businesses. Mentorship is very important. I have learned so much from my teachers. I've learned so much from my mentors. I have unfortunately lost um, most of my mentors. I have, and these are people that I knew in life and in real life and spoke to them and whatnot. And then, of course, some of us, I'm one of those people who has like online mentors that haven't necessarily met people, maybe had like one or two services from them or like conversations, but like mentor from afar. I have a handful of those as well, a couple of them. But I've lost the 3 live in person mentors who taught me a lot. And I can say, before I get sad, that they've been valuable. Their insight has been invaluable. And that is another thing, too, that business school necessarily won't prepare you for unless, you know, they emphasize that, or unless you go looking for it yourself, is to have someone break down things to you that they have learned so that you don't have to go through the painful process yourself. Um, to those people, I'm always grateful. And yeah, I've learned a lot, and more than money could buy, more than I could pay for. I learned so much. Even thinking about one, he said to me, don't ever have one client be more than, I think he said, 30 to 40% of your income as a business. Because if something happens with them, it can effectively cripple your business. And this was after I had a painful, it was a bad ending to a a relationship that I had with a client, and I fired them. I had no choice. Um, and at the same time, they were one of only a handful of clients that I had, and they represented, it was a blow for me in my mind at that time that I lost that income. But I knew it was the right thing to do. And when I explained the situation to him, he said, listen, don't put yourself back in that situation. No one should ever represent more than this particular amount of income revenue for your business. And I took that with me, right? And so these are the things that, I may have never learned that lesson, even though I was in that situation. I may not have come to that conclusion, even through that experience. So I'm going to stop here. I will see you guys the week after next. I'm not going live next week. I'll be back week after next to chat with you. I know we're going into the holiday season, so I'm not really sure that I'm going to go live in December because y'all want to have fun. Y'all want to be out in the streets. Nothing wrong with that. I'm not judging. Maybe I might be in the streets too. Maybe I just want to take a little siesta, a little break as well, even though December is going to be busy as well. So I appreciate you. Thank you so much for watching. You could have been doing anything else in the whole wide world, but you decided to spend some time with me, and for that, I am always grateful. Um, yeah, I'll see you next time. Bye.